Hello everyone, I'm Bruno Diniz and this is Fintech Talks again. It's a great pleasure and honor here to receive Matteo Rizzi. Matteo's a huge influencer here in Fintech, in the Fintech world, and he's a guy that has been a friend of mine after so many times talking through only social media and a couple events, right? We got the chance to interview him. So Matteo, thanks a lot for being here and to taking your time to record this. And I want to hear a little bit about you. Can you give a little bit of background to our audience about you?
Of course, Bruno, of course. Thank you for having me here to start with. My story is pretty simple. My name is Matteo Rizzi and I worked for Swift for 13 years. And some of you might have heard of an initiative called InnoTribe, which was born in 2008 and I co-founded with a bunch of other Swift employees. InnoTribe is considered as the first global fintech movement that discovered a bunch of trends, that launched the first global startup challenge, discovering companies like TransferWise or Revolut, which are actually one of the topics that we're going to talk about today. After InnoTribe, I left Swift in 2013, became an investor with 3 different funds, invested in a bunch of startups, including Tandem, for example, or Moven, the company of our common friends, Brett, Startup Bootcamp, eToro, amongst the most famous names. And I did these investments with basically 3 different funds. One was SBT Venture Capital, which is the Russian corporate venture capital of Sberbank. And then with Omidyar Network as a venture partner. Omidyar is one of the impact largest funds that was actually set up by Pierre Omidyar, the founder of eBay. And lastly, with Nevafin Ventures, which is the corporate venture arm of Intesa Sanpaolo, which is the largest Italian bank. So I always kept an investor hat. And I also built something called FintechStage, together with the former CEO of Swift, Lazzaro Campos. And the beauty of FintechStage is that you can explain it with an equation. So you take a format, a vertical and a partnership, and you build a program. So FintechStage is basically a program builder.
Amazing.
And here I am.
So Matteo, to start with, I want to hear from you a little bit about trends of fintech in Europe. I think you're pretty aware of what's going on. You live in Portugal today, and you also have the chance to witness like very different movements in the region. So I would like to know from you, from 2019 and on, what do you think about what's going on, what the trends are appearing in Europe right now?
So the first trend I would like to mention is more than a technology trend, is almost a market trend. Okay, and this market trend is about some of the largest financial institutions in Europe that were mostly out of the game just yet, not playing an important role in investing in startups, for example, or in building up innovation initiatives, are actually, taking a step further and build, I want to say, fintech arms, and it's a whole new movement of fintech initiatives that we are seeing. That's a clearly first trend. And I could name Société Générale in Paris, my friend Claire Calmejean. She has just been appointed global head of innovation, but also of SG Ventures, which is, it will become one of the largest corporate venture capital in Europe, and, BNP Paribas. I mentioned Intesa Sanpaolo. So this is, we are clearly into a collaboration galore, between fintech and banks. And banks are now, I believe, stepping up yet again in putting their money where their mouth is. That's the first trend.
Sure.
Then I want to say a couple of technology / fintech trends in general, which is clearly neobanks are around for a few years already,
Sure.
and I know we're going to talk about it later on.
Yeah.
But now it's time for SME banking to step up.
For sure. Yeah.
So clearly in Europe now you have companies like Konto, for example, or Tink in Sweden, and these guys are chasing one of the biggest market in Europe that is not being taken yet, because chasing the B2C is relatively easier than start interacting with the millions of SMEs in Europe, which have very different, I want to say, necessities, the needs, according to which country we're talking about.
And very unserved, right? Just like in countries like Brazil, we're seeing the same thing.
Absolutely. The second trend I would like to mention is something that we are actually tackling a lot with FinTechStage as well, and I call it the adjacencies. So it is time. FinTech is almost already old when you think of it as a whole movement, right? Now it feels like the market has gone 2 or 3 steps down and is diving in different type of partnerships to make new disruptions and new innovations taking place. And I'll give you a couple of examples, of course. So we are now exploring a market called PropTech, right? Which is real estate and FinTech.
Sure.
Now, this is a market trend per se, but it's also a technology trend because it combines, smart contracts and, smart usage of data and AIs, as well as different type of financing and funding, the crowdfunding in real estate, for example. So this is clearly, I think that Europe is a privileged market to start something like this. Why? Because, it is a pretty structured and condensated market. If you take, for example, like Italy or France, there are 2 or 3 very large real estate players that have, 40, 50, 60 years old kind of technology and existence, right? So, and startup has rarely talked to them yet. At the same time, most of the banks in Italy, for example, but also in the rest of Europe, they do have a real estate arm. And there are no startups talking to them. So this is one.
Poised to disruption.
Exactly. And the second trend, because of course this could be like a 6 hours discussion, I want to mention something that we call the FinTech for corporates. So instead of, if you think, Bruno, of who FinTech startups talk to so far, they either go into the B2C space or into basically banks. So, startups either like Revolut, they are after you and me, or B2B startups, they are trying to sell to banks. Now, when you think that the treasurer of Orange, for example, in Paris, Orange has something like 500 bank accounts in 50 banks. Nobody talks FinTech to these guys, And there are plenty of things to do. Think of cash management, liquidity management, factoring, smart contracts, data. There are a bunch of solutions that could be adapted for large corporations. And this is clearly a trend that needs to be explored. Now, as an example, which type of partnerships we are talking about? You take a bank, you take the 20 top corporates of a given country, and then you take the startups that are either local or outside of the country that are willing to come and offer solution to these corporates. So it is like the good old innovation program, if you want to, but like verticalized on a given topic.
Okay, amazing. Yeah. I think that's definitely a clear trend. Not only in Europe. I would like watch out the other places in the world as well. Well, and talking about specifically about the one topic you touched, which is neobanks. You had the chance to invest in some neobanks early on, like Tandem and some others. And we saw like this first wave of the first generation of neobanks with the Simple, with the guys like Fidor, in so many others. How do you see this trend evolving, and what do you think is going to happen with those guys? Just like it recently announced that any number 26, and also Revolut are coming here to Latin America, specifically to Brazil. How do you see those guys becoming global, and how do you see this trend evolving as a whole?
So I think that there are kind of three phases, if you want to know, in the whole neobank space. The first one, you're right, is the era of the Simple and the Feeder. Okay, and both of them have been acquired by large financial institutions.
Exactly.
The reason, of course, is that it was almost a learning exercise, like for these large banks.
For the incumbents.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And then the second wave is the waves of the TransferWise and the Revolut and the number 26 and Starling Bank and you name it.
Okay? Yeah.
So these guys, they all started, in their own country. They all took a, passport licensing to be able to expand in the whole Europe. But they are all after, basically, the deposit accounts.
Yeah.
Because so far, there is, that's like the second phase. It is basically customers hunting.
Yeah.
Okay. Realizing that the first quick way to make money is to capture their deposit.
Okay.
And of course, they are investing, and they have invested a lot of money in marketing and in being able to attract the attention. Because technically, when you look at it, take the Monzo or the N26 or the Moniz, there are more or less not very different from one to another.
Yeah,
okay?
Definitely.
The third phase, which basically involves the same players, but I think with a new mindset, is for these neobanks to become marketplaces.
Okay.
No, and take for example Starling Bank. Okay?
Yeah.
Starling has embraced immediately this concept of the fintech marketplace. And for example, they struck a partnership with a startup called Wealthsimple.
Yeah.
And what they can do is, hey, if you have an account on Starling, you can use your funds to invest, using Wealthsimple. And I call it stealing it from my friend Sam Moll, that you know.
Yeah.
And he actually stole this slide that is showing, and when he showed it, I showed it as well. We call it the Copernican leap in banking.
Oh, yeah.
And what is this Copernican leap is accept, basically, and I'm paraphrasing it, that you might not be the best in offering your own product and services to the client, so you need to be open in offering third parties services to your own clients.
Yeah, that's connecting with the concept we are seeing right now of open banking, all the whole stuff,
Absolutely.
the rebundling thing, and taking the example of number 26, that they got this kind of integration with TransferWise.
Indeed.
It's like this win-win situation. And definitely, when we see this new generation, doesn't make any sense for those companies to have like a whole area of foreign exchange or something like that, or remittances. It's better to be the partner with the best in class. Right?
Indeed. Well, I gotta tell you, Bruno. So I actually, right now, I do have my number 26 card with me. I just have one card.
Sure.
Truth being told, I also opened an account with TransferWise because it allows, like Revolut, to get multiple accounts in the same wallet.
Sure.
And for someone like me, who travels a lot, is actually extremely important. And money, as a money saver, Can you imagine? I got my TransferWise card. I was in Nigeria a couple of weeks ago, and I paid directly with my TransferWise card, and I was debited in my Naira's account.
Okay.
I mean, if you try to send money from a European account to Nigeria, they're going to probably rip you off with 20 euros, no matter what is the amount, right?
So many taxes,
Exactly. So what I did is I just converted some euros in Nairas for euros or two.
Yeah.
And then when I paid Naira, my Naira account, to the Naira account of my service provider in this case.
Amazing.
So that's, it is a revolution in this case that technologically wise was really impossible a couple of years ago.
Definitely. And taking a look about the future of that, at the beginning, players like Simple, like Fidor attracted like attention of the incumbents. The guys come and bought them. And now we have like this case of number 26 and also Nubank here that got invested by Tencent and these big tech players. How do you see the things going? Like, do you see like the banks going after and buying those guys, or the big techs doing that, or those guys trying, to strengthen their own feet in the market? How do you see that?
So this is, of course, I can give my own opinion because it's a bit of a crystal ball question, as you can imagine. Because the thing is, when you see the valuation of some of these very large European unicorns, they are almost already too big to be both,
Exactly.
So as at the same time, they are not really, even close to make a decent amount of money. So they still need a few million more customers because to prove, before proving that their model works, right? Yeah. So I think that what is going to happen is that if a bank, for example, wants to buy one of these neo ones, they are going to rather go to the level 2 sort of,
just for the technology.
Exactly, because the top 2 or 3 now, they are in a process of becoming so big that I don't think the economics for a bank would work. There is a little bit of the paradox here in their business model is that they are still making money like old banks, okay? They are not making money, the reason why they are cheaper is because they consciously decide to basically take a cut on their potential revenues in, for example, change commission, ATM withdrawal, something like that. So like now, for example, you have like a 4 or 5 withdrawal per month for free with most of them.
Okay.
If I do the same with my own bank, it's going to cost me maybe, €5 each. For sure. Something like that.
I understand that.
Another, I am banking with Novo Banco in Portugal for my own company, right? Yeah. Can you imagine I have almost €100 per month in banking fees?
My God.
Just because when I'm here, I pay it in reais, but the guys are converting it in euro. And every time I do a payment, they take a sort of a fee for the operation. Plus, I'm pretty sure I've been screwed over in the forex,
Yeah.
So, this and then again, it's a matter of stickness and inertia, and my PA just she's following the accounts. She just made me noticing it, right?
Yeah.
And I said, well, I need to do something, and possibly TransferWise is the solution.
Yeah.
But the thing is, talking about the paradox, is that if TransferWise does not make money on this, they need to be able to find a new partnership to make that money and or scale much faster so that they have 50 million clients, not 5, that's the challenge.
And to make the economics make sense and everything. Yeah, definitely. But I think the good thing is it's good for the consumer.
Absolutely.
Yeah, it's going to drive down the
we win by all means.
Definitely.
Yeah.
That's what we hope and expect here, and I think it's happening all over the place. And in Brazil, I think there's a very positive outlook when you see the many good things that this fintech movement have brought. to the consumers, I'm pretty sure that's going to be.
There is actually maybe one thing, Bruno, that I would add, and is the fact that digital banking is a great opportunity for deepening the financial sector, for the financial inclusion piece of the equation, right?
Sure.
And I think that the relationship between the telco operators and the neobanks is going to be the fundamental shift for the bottom of the pyramid to be able to getting less and less unbanked when you think of it, right? So, and there is a word that we have not said yet, which is regulation, is going to play a fundamental role in, I don't want to call it emerging markets because they're not, but I want to call it the mass underbanked markets, like Brazil, right? And when you have dozens of millions of people with a phone and without the bank account, of course the opportunity here is to make smart partnerships among the two, using the neobank technology. That's why these guys want to come here, because they realize that they have an opportunity to bank these guys at a very low price. There is no mystery. At the price that it would be too hard to reach for an incumbent. That's the reason. And I think that the role neobanks are going to play in a massively unbanked market is also going to be extremely crucial for the future.
Amazing, for sure. Well, Matteo, we're reaching the end of our conversation. I would like to thank a lot you for being here and participating. I'd like to thank you for watching the video, and I also want you to subscribe for our channel here to see more content like this. And Matteo, again, thanks, and let's meet somewhere else in the world.
To be back, guys. Let's do an amazing event around here.
Okay. See you. Bye-bye.